Hello everybody, thanks for stopping by for another session of Shoot the Breeze with the Reeve. Hot topic today that we have that is often misunderstood by a lot of residents is how property assessment works. Today I am joined by Troy Birtles from Accurate Assessment Group. Thank you for coming, Troy. Could you let us know who you are and what it is that you do?
Thanks for having us. Accurate Assessment Group is a private assessment company in Alberta. We provide assessment services to many municipalities, including Woodlands County. So we are not a direct employee of the county. Our job is essentially to place a dollar value on property for taxation purposes. In Alberta, assessment is based on the ad valorem principle, which means according to value. So in other words, the amount of tax you pay is based on the value of your property. You will often compare it to your neighbors. How come their tax amount is less than my tax amount? The answer is often because your property might be worth more. There are many different variables that come into play in assessment. Exemptions, for example. The building that we're sitting in, the municipal county building, is not taxed. It's an exempt property. Another exempt property would be church or farm buildings, for example. So you might live on a 5-acre acreage that has nothing to do with farming. The value of your property might be, say, $500,000. Your neighbor might sit on a quarter of land that farms, and their property might be worth $1 million, but their taxes will be less because of certain exemptions that come into play in the assessment calculation. It's important to note that this isn't a Woodlands County decision. That's a province of Alberta legislation rule. So it would be the same impact in Woodlands County as it might be in the NB of Greenview or somewhere in the southern part of the province.
Okay, so I guess just to sum it up then, the relationship between your assessed value and your taxation, the more that you do to your property and the higher the assessed value is, the higher the taxation will be on that property.
That is correct.
I guess a couple questions that we get from a lot of residents are what affects your assessment directly? How does assessment grow?
Great question, and often we have that question from ratepayers yearly. A property owner is going to maintain their home whenever it needs it. So, for example, you'll repaint the inside of your house, or you'll put new carpet when it's worn out, and that's just general maintenance. But when you go to the steps of, say, you built an addition, well, that's significantly increasing the value of your property. Or maybe you put a new roof, new siding, new windows, new doors, and you renovate the interior of your home. You've significantly increased the value of your property. People would be willing to pay a lot more money for it, and therefore that affects your assessment, which in turn affects taxes.
Right. Now, when it comes to assessment and the assessors in the area, is it necessary for the assessor to enter a house or a building to, I guess, see what's done? And if so, what if the individual disagrees with, letting them into your that?
Yeah, that's a common concern. Within the legislation in Alberta, we do have the right to enter property. It's one of those things where we don't want to force the issue. If a property owner doesn't want us on their property, we're not going to make a big fight about it. In a perfect scenario, we would be able to interview the property owner at the door, ask him a bunch of questions that we need to know the answers to, and carry on. We typically don't enter buildings other than during construction stages these days. There's a lot of information at that time that we can garnish from the property that is needed for the assessment, and we don't need to go, in our 5-year rotation, we don't need to go back inside of a property. We already know what's there. There's no point in bothering the property owner for to answer questions that we already know the answers to. If the property owner still doesn't want to answer questions, unfortunately, at that point we have to result in estimating what we think might be there.
Okay, so when it comes to what's assessed within Woodlands County, you had a discussion around private residents and farmland and stuff, but there's other entities within the county that are assessed, like our M&E, machine and equipment. Are you able to elaborate on that and kind of explain what builds the assessment within Woodlands County?
So there's four main categories of assessment: residential, non-residential, farmland, and machinery and equipment. So the ratepayers that I speak to generally are residential property owners, and that's what we've been talking about so far. Non-residential would be things like gravel pits or trucking companies that have warehouses or a welding business, campground, for example. Farmland is pretty straightforward. It's all the land that's farmed in the county, and it's important to note that farmland is not assessed based on market value. It's assessed based on a formula that was calculated many years ago and is used across the province. And then lastly, machinery and equipment, and that is essentially all your oil and gas facilities. There's buildings and structures and machinery and equipment, and in Woodlands County, the province is responsible for those assessments.
All right, thank you. It just kind of builds a bigger picture for what assessment actually is within the municipality. Now, this is going to be one of the ones, I guess, question for you that comes up all the time from residents is what happens if they disagree with their assessment? What would be a valid complaint on that? What type of process would it look like if, say, the assessment comes in a lot higher than they were anticipating, or again, they don't agree with the valuation given to the property?
So the first step would be to phone the county, because often ratepayers link taxes with assessment, and that's valid. But if your question is a tax question, then the staff at the county are best to answer it. Often, regarding my monthly tax payment has changed. How come? I don't have the answer for that. So when they phone the county and have those questions answered, if there are still questions remaining about the assessment, the staff at the county here will collect the property owner's information and send that to me. I'll review the details and call the property owner back. A valid complaint might be, let's say, you've just had an appraisal done last year and the appraisal came in at $400,000 and your assessment is $500,000. Well, that's a significant difference. Market value is ultimately what we're trying to achieve on the assessment. And so in that scenario, we would review the appraisal with the property owner, and perhaps there's something about the property that we misinterpreted and got wrong. And if it's as simple as that, we make a correction and carry on. However, there are instances where maybe the appraiser might have made a mistake, or the opinion of value of $400,000 is just too low. And so in that instance, we would explain about all of the recent sales in the neighborhood, how they compare to their property, and have a discussion in that regard. Now, once we're at that spot, if the property owner still feels that the assessment is wrong, they absolutely have the right to file an assessment complaint and go through the process.
I guess, and coming around the questions, you're talking about your neighbors and with the assessment and that, is it possible for somebody to see what the assessed value is of their, other properties within the municipality or their neighbors or different areas to kind of see how the valuation compares?
Yes, it is. In fact, I believe the county has all of the assessments posted on the website. That's year round. You can look up any assessment. In that number, you won't have all the details if you might want to know a little bit about your assessment. From the point of the mailing of the assessment notices for 60 days, the assessment roll is open, which means you can ask any questions you want and to figure out how your assessment is calculated. Once it gets to that depth, the county staff puts it to me and then I answer those questions for them.
Right. And I got one final question here, and again, this is more for the visibility because our residents within the municipality see the vehicles every now and in different areas. Within Woodlands County, do you know we'll say the rotation, or how many years between like zone 1, we'll say per se, Anselmo will end up seeing the assessors come through?
So by legislation in Alberta, we are required to revisit all assessments within a 5-year period. So we break the municipality down into 5 different zones. We look at 20% of the properties regardless. So we would roll up on a property, we would confirm what we have assessed with what we see If everything looks good, we carry on, don't need to bother the property owner. The next property might be, we will see an addition on the building or some renovations. At that point, we'll need to collect more information. We'll go into the property and interview the property owner. That doesn't mean that we won't visit the remaining 80% of the municipality if there's a need to. So if you pull a permit to build a home somewhere else in the municipality, well, we're gonna go there regardless, whether it's in our 5-year rotation or not.
All right. Well, that's been great. This has been very helpful, helping to clarify a lot of the assessment and how it kind of works within our municipality. We really appreciate you coming in today, and thank you very much for it.
Thank you.
And thanks everybody for watching, and stop in next time for another session of Shoot the Breeze with the Reeve.